Here's a look at the final sketch or final drawing. So let's get into how I did this. I'm starting out with an HB pencil, using it very lightly. And I determined the top and bottom limits of the portrait of whatever drawing I'm doing. So right there I have two lines. I have one at the top, one at the bottom. So now what I do is I start kind of guesstimating, blocking in some things using straight lines only. And I know where the top and bottom are now because I defined that. So now I'm finding a center line between that top and bottom horizontal line. I found a center line. So these are three guidelines: that top line, the center line, and the bottom line. Those are some guidelines I can use to start blocking in this portrait, so I can find out what's around that center line, start branching off from there. Same with the top and bottom. And now with this block in, what I'm really trying to figure out is just the outer limits of everything, of the portrait, and the outer, mostly the width. And that's what I'm checking right there, making sure I have the width correct. And then luckily with this drawing, I didn't really have to change much. My guesstimations were pretty close, pretty dead on, luckily, for the width. Usually, if something I had drawn in was a little bit off, then I would change it, and then I would double check myself with measuring, and then make any changes necessary until I have the width in proportion to the height. So definitely trying to keep it in proportion to the original reference. That's really my main focus here when blocking in something like this. And with any drawing, I mean, trying to keep it in proportion, trying to keep it realistic. That's kind of my main focus. So here I'm just slowly still blocking things in, but I'm starting to work on the inside of the face now, or of the portrait. Probably getting a little too ahead of myself here with that, but in the end it turned out okay. But I feel pretty confident. You know, I have the width and the height correct, so now I'm just moving in, blocking in things, moving to smaller and smaller areas. You know, so I moved. I kind of went around the beard, so I started blocking in the entire outer limits of the entire head, the hat, the beard, everything. And then I made sure I had the hat blocked in correctly, his shirt and kind of his collar, neck thing, and then the beard, and then the face itself. So these are kind of the bit larger, larger areas, or smaller areas. And now I'm just using a kneaded eraser, cleaning up some of the lines. And then I start moving to the features, the ear, the mouth, the nose, the eyes, eyebrows. So that's how I kind of think about when I'm blocking in. So I start with the entire shape, and then I break that shape into slightly smaller shapes. So his hat, the beard, his face, the neck, and the shirt. Tweaking a few things here if need be. And then I just go smaller and smaller. So then I just move to the nose, eyes, mouth, features, things like that. So that's kind of a logical way to think about it when going from larger shapes to smaller shapes. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. And now I'm breaking the hat down into the smaller shapes. So that's kind of the way that I think about it, how I go about it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's just you have to get these proportions correct overall, and then to have the proportions correct between those major areas like the hat, the face, the beard. Have to have those proportions correct. And once you know that you have that all correct using comparative measuring and proportions, and then you just start digging into it. I got most of the line work down, and now I'm just starting with this HB pencil. I'm just lightly adding some values here, and I really like it at this stage. It's very sketchy looking, and I almost could have just stopped here with just a little bit of shading. It's really nice contrast, very sketchy. very simple. But I decided to push through and just see how far I could take this. So I'm just adding, I mean, there's no trick here to adding the value. I'm just using some lines to add some value. Mainly up and down vertical lines for the value. It's something I'm experimenting with, kind of like having some kind of style with my shading. But with this particular drawing, I kind of experimented by having all the value and all the shading going one direction. So throughout the entire drawing, most of my shading is just going up and down. I didn't really do much cross hatching or anything. It's just up and down shading. So just something I'm experimenting with. I'm constantly playing around with stuff, and just maybe on the next drawing I'll probably do cross hatching or something and see how that compares to this one. I'm just playing around and having fun. So whatever way is natural to you, whatever feels natural, just go for it and just play around. And maybe on the next drawing you do something that doesn't feel as natural and see what the outcome is. I mean, that's one way to experiment. But so here I'm paying close attention to the values around the face, because this is really kind of the main focal point. I mean, the face, around the eyes and nose and mouth, that's really, for most portraits, that's kind of the focal area. But just take note of how slowly I'm working this value. I didn't go right away into the very dark darks. I'm just slowly building things up. So now I just switched my pencil. So I was using an HB that entire time, and now I'm using a 3B. And those are the only two pencils I used for this drawing. I tried to just keep it simple. I could have gotten a lot darker if I wanted to use like a 4B, 5B, 6B, or even an 8B. But I don't know, I didn't really feel like I wanted to get really, really dark. So I was just playing in kind of a limited value range and just experimenting. So yeah, I'm using the 3B now, getting a little bit darker and focusing on the major dark areas of the portrait. So his hat and then his neck, the collar. So these things are black in the photo, and that's what I'm focusing on first. Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to maintain the value structure, maintain this contrast. So I may not get as dark as the actual photo. So I'm not copying value to value. But it's kind of like a painting. I want the value to work within the drawing. I'm not copying tone for tone. So anything kind of black, like his eyes, his nostril, part of his beard or his mustache, his eyebrows, anything black, that's what I'm focusing on. I'm getting in the very darkest dark areas, and then I'm moving out from there, and finding areas that are just a little bit lighter than those darkest areas. So finding the secondary darkest areas, kind of the reflected light, which most of it is all reflected light, but just finding the secondary darkest areas and moving out from those and just moving to lighter and lighter areas. And that's pretty much what I do when I work on a drawing like this. I just go back, I look at the darkest areas, and then I fill those in, and then I work out from there. I move a little bit lighter, and then go a little bit lighter than that, and then a little bit lighter. And then I just repeat. I go back over the darkest areas and move out from there until I feel like I got the drawing to where I want it to be. And this whole time, I'm keep in mind, I have to maintain those initial proportions that I did with the line work. I have to maintain the correct drawing where his features are. And some of it's a little off right now. I'm going to end up fixing like his eye, I believe, and maybe part of his nose. So you can see there I'm fixing his eyelashes. I felt it was a little bit off. So sometimes that's going to happen. You're going to realize, okay, what I did in the beginning was a little bit rough and I need to kind of refine it a little bit more, fix something up. especially with a drawing like this. I'm drawing pretty small. I mean, you can compare the drawing to my hand. It's no bigger than my hand. So it's kind of a smaller type of drawing. It's more like a sketch. It's just more of a, I would say it's more of a finished sketch. And now I'm correcting his nostril a bit as well, and focusing on the value and just trying to get the correct drawing down. And it's those small things like that are, it's really difficult, tweaking those very small shapes and trying to get it as close as possible to the reference photo. So you can start to get a sense of how I work here. Like I worked around the eyes and the face, and then I moved down to the nose. Now I'm moving down to the mouth. So I kind of just move around the face here, jumping whatever's connecting to what I was just working on. And I just keep darkening things and tweaking things until I feel that I got them where they need to be. It's mainly an intuitive process for me. I keep it very intuitive. I try not to overthink anything, and I go with what feels right to me. And sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes it's a wrong judgment, and I have to go back and erase it. But I mean, that's the whole point of drawing, is like, that's why there's erasers, because you're gonna make mistakes. So the beard here is kind of tricky, but I'm not trying to focus on really the texture too much. I know that is part of it. I want to get the texture to seem like hair and like it's a beard, but I'm really just focusing on the value. And I'm comparing things around it. So like his shirt is a little bit darker, so I'm trying to darken that now to get the beard to look a little bit lighter, like it's a white gray beard. So once again, going over those dark areas again, just layering the graphite and not pushing very hard, keeping the pressure even, somewhat light. I'm not pushing very hard. Just taking my time to build up some layers of graphite and building up the drawing slowly. This drawing took me about an hour and a half or hour and 15 minutes of drawing time. So yeah, I just took my time with this. Most of the drawing was just shading. I got those proportions down in the beginning, got those out of the way very quickly. And luckily everything turned out pretty correct from what my measurements told me. Which is very rare. It doesn't usually happen that quickly, especially with something like a portrait. But I've been doing a lot of practice recently, so I think that's really helped me. My observational skills are becoming a little bit more sharp. At least I hope. That's what I'm always shooting for. So still just working on this beard. You can see I erased a few things there earlier, trying to lighten up, make sure I'm keeping the beard a little bit lighter than everything else. And along with the face and the beard are kind of the lighter things. And I'm trying to really get that hat and the neck to really contrast against the beard and the face. That's really the main area of contrast I'm focusing on. You can see I've gone over the hat and that collar a few different times. And something interesting you'll see here in a second. So I've been using a 3B most of this time, but to get kind of the next darkest, I'm going to end up darkening here in just a few seconds one more time, that neck and the head. And I'm going to go over all of that I've done with a 3B. I'm going to go over it with an HB, which is a little counterintuitive. But having... it's just experimenting, playing around with that. That HB actually fills in some of the... See here, I'm going in with the HB now, and it's actually getting darker. And I'm still not pushing very hard. It's still just a medium kind of... But I'm just filling in the tooth of the paper there. And it just gets a little bit darker. Because it's just a slightly sharper pencil. It holds a point a little bit more. The lead's a little bit harder. So you're able to fill in some of the tooth a little bit more. And it just makes it look a little bit darker. And that's kind of the last layer that I'm going to put on. So I'm just working my way around the face, darkening things up one last time. And like I said, this is as dark as that I wanted to go. I could have gotten really lifelike contrast and really went darker. I mean, I could have used charcoal and gotten black, really dark black, but it's not something that I wanted to really do. It's not what I wanted to focus on. I wanted to really play around with this limited value. You know, really limit my values here. Simplify it, keep it simple, but try to be as realistic as possible, and just focus on subtlety. You know, just trying to be as subtle as possible. And I end up here in a second, I'll play around with the background and realize that I'll put some light strokes in the background, and then I end up erasing it because I realized it just wasn't what I was going for. So sometimes you just experiment, man. See here, I'm putting some tone in the background, trying to give a little more atmosphere to it, and I realized I didn't like it. I didn't like it for some reason, so I ended up erasing it now. But you know, sometimes you just have to play around with it. But that's pretty much the end of the video here. So hope you learned something, and thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other tutorial videos for drawing and painting. Also subscribe to see future episodes. Peace.